And now I am ready to give the floor to our next presenter, Michal Kovář. Michal, I read your abstract containing a lot of things. It's something miraculous and very, very secret things. Čehov, read Norwegian. Please clarify on your topic. The floor is yours, Michal.
Thank you very much, Irina. And I'm happy to see at least some of your faces and some very known names of you. So happy to be in touch with you again, at least in this way. Introduction. So my paper deals with an interpretation of the motive of the reed. It should be a typical hermeneutical quest starting from the intra-textual connections to comparisons with the same or similar genres of the same period, then proceeding wider with another period and genres and ending in foreign cultural areas. Thus, it should be a mapping of the changes in the function of the particular motive, perhaps even to its primeval referential or metonymic motivation or motivations. We know that, for instance, a metaphor or a motive may be completely unintelligible if the chain of changes has not been revealed. Now I feel a need to explain the motivation regarding my personal interest in the reed. I'm not at all a Scandinavist or an expert in Icelandic culture in any way. Just I've heard about the lecture on a strange, incomprehensible position of the reed motif in Old Norse sagas. This was the second-hand information. The first-hand information I've gotten afterwards was that the unknown function of the reed motif appears namely in Egil saga from the early 13th century. In Egil saga, the significant events allegedly take place nearby a reed. However, the meaning of the reed situation is quite unclear. When I heard the statement, my structuralist me was shaken. The Finnish structuralist Pentti Leino says that there are no accidents in language or texts. And since the lecturer was familiar with the Old Norse textual corpus, it came to my mind to skip the first step, the comparison within the identical genre, and turn to a wider cultural context. I had actually tried to search for Icelandic proverbs, but there is no a single proverb with the reed lexeme in any Icelandic collection I worked with, which are these two ones. Then I found some supportive statement, which I'm also adding to the view. The view that the proverbs which we notice in the Íslendinga sögur might be studied more accurately as partially extant evidence of the early existence of much larger and more complex oral repository of wisdom pertaining to the ethics and mores of pre-literate North Germanic culture. It is therefore possible that there is a link between texts of different kinds, proverbs, and other genres in terms of morality, shared mythemata, and other patterns. And since the proverbs and conventional phraseology in general reflect and perhaps even create figurativity or its basic frames, it might be helpful when interpreting an old fictional text to take a look into existing proverb collections. The second, even bigger problem is that I'm unable to identify the Old Norse word for reed in the original texts of the sagas, namely in Egil saga. Dictionaries suggest the lexeme reyr. However, in sagas, this word has only few occurrences and mostly on the other pole of its polysemy, the one linked to a grave or tomb. It could have happened that in the original Old Norse text, another word was used in the meaning of the reed, but due to my philological ignorance, in the topic, I'm unable to realize that. To bolster the opinion about the possible loss in translation, I can quote translations of 2 verses of Völsunga saga, namely about the Attila's dream about the death of his sons. This part of this Völsunga saga is a variant actually of a Nibelungenlied, if you know. So one of the characters is Attila. So I have this Old Norse original here, and then there is a Swedish translation, and there is also this rare lexeme in the compositum, and then there is a Swedish translation with also this was, which means also the reed, samplings of reed, and then we have this English older from the 19th century English translation 1 of plants or Atli spake. Of plants I dreamed in the garden drooping, that fain would I have full height to grow, plucked by the roots and red with blood, they brought them hither and bade me eat. I dreamed my hawks from my hand had flown, eager for food, to an evil house. I dreamed their hearts with honey I ate, soaked in blood and heavy my sorrow. Hounds I dreamed, from my hand I loosed, loud in hunger and pain they howled. Their flesh, methought, was eagle's food, and their bodies now I needs must eat. So, and only 2 verses then in the translation B. In the fair garth, methought had samplings fallen. So you see that there is no reed mentioning it. And let us just remember the triadic structure of the 2 plants, or reeds, hawks, and dogs in this part of Völsunga saga. Then I've just added Czech translation, where there is also mentioned the samplings of reed or blades of reed. Being aware that in translation may occur concretizations, abstractizations, substitution, and so on, I've replaced the word reed in English translations of Egil Saga with similar words like sedge, shrub, copse, hold, referring to some thin plant aggregate, unity in plurality, a place to hide if we would like to start the task deductively. The search had no significant result except the following passage from Egil Saga. Then Thorstein with his company rode out over the moor, taking with them the boy Grim. And when they came to the holt that is there, the boy died. And they buried him there in the holt, called since Grim's holt. And the place where they fought is called Battle Hillock. The story about Grim's murder is repeated at the end and linked to the concealing of Grim's wealth. There is something related to the latency, therefore. In Gautrek's saga, a blade of reed was unexpectedly used as a weapon. Similar occurrence is in Cormac's saga. There is the highlighted collocation is the important one, reed of the fight. Which is probably kenning with the meaning of a sword, of course. Now let us look at the part of das Rohr entry in Grimm's Deutsches Wörterbuch. Wer im Rohr sitzt, hat gut Pfeifen schneiden, or there is a variant with soll or muss. So there is the proverb, wer im Rohr sitzt, hat gut Pfeifen schneiden, and the idiom einen Fels auf ein Rohr gründen. The proverb has a counterpart in Hungarian, kinát között ül, szinte oly sípot csinál, mi nem üt akar. The meaning of the German proverb, when someone has a full opportunity for something, it is not difficult to do so for him or her, or is even obliged to use the opportunity. And the meaning of the Hungarian proverb, that someone who has a full opportunity to do something can freely choose the result of his or her effort. They are related to the abundance and completeness vastness of the opportunity metaphorically expressed in the reed, used as a collective. The formulaic or conceptual on the scale of deontic modality, switch in the German variants of the proverb, muss soll or merely schneidet, is interesting too, however, out of my scope. The idiom to place a rock on the reed is based in a quite different quality of the reed, namely its weakness. Compare also the German comparison, wie ein schwankendes Rohr im Wind, which is also universal, I think, in many European languages. Someone is, with the meaning, someone is unreliable. And there is plenty of Hungarian proverbs, sayings, and idioms applying this aspect. I have some proverbs and other sayings taken from régi magyar szólások és közmondások. A beam is not a blade of reed. Do not place your hope on snow. Neither lean it against a reed. Who hopes leans on a blade of reed. Good fortune is unbreakable as a blade of reed. The one whose hope leans on a blade of reed is easy to bend down. To trust in it, him or her, like in a twice bent or buttressed reed fence. Who trusts in man leans on reed. Who trusts a poor man leans on reed. To lean on a blade of reed, to defend oneself with a blade of reed. No wonder that an immature reed bends down, which has also a Japanese counterpart. A young reed is easy to bend. I also trusted in a blade of reed, who after growing up bent to someone else, to sway like a blade of reed, powerless like a reed pillar, unstable like a reed wall. The man is feeble like a full-grown blade of reed, seam or beam, holds the reed wall. There is a special causal interrelation between the reed and the wind, with the meaning that even an insignificant change must have its cause. The reed doesn't move without blowing the wind. With a direct counterpart in an Indian proverb, a reed doesn't bend down when it's not windy. The flexibility of reed is not necessarily a negative quality, but can stay for an expression of a Darwinist strength of adaptability. The reed is weak, still the wind can only bend it. The wind uproots the oak, but doesn't manage to uproot the reed. And the English direct counterpart from the Oxford Dictionary of Proverbs, reed before the wind lives on while mighty oaks do fall. So the reed, similarly to hay, as a metaphor of poor man or person or lowly birth, like in a Bengal proverb, princes fight together, but the reed is the one who dies. A reed bow fits to a violin made of willow wood. A king's crown sometimes falls to the reed cottage. A reed stroke a lord's head, with a meaning a trivial accident may happen also to a nobleman, or even a trivial or minute thing may cause a big damage. And then we can compare it to the Finnish proverb borrowed from vaikka vihollinen näyttäisi kaislaköydeltä varahäntä kuin käärmettä, even though the enemy seems to be a reed rope, be cautious as if he were a snake. And a blade of reed has also other basic qualities in a metaphoric description of a person: straight like a reed, taller than a tower, slimmer than a reed. Then A quite sophisticated and splendid image bordering a bit with a kitsch can be found in Finnish proverb again. The reed decoration of a house is visible, but the ornaments of a heart of a human heart are invisible. And a mythical image of the reed connecting three of the elements in a Karelian riddle. The legs in the ground, the head in the air, the trunk in the water, which is reed. And then there is some enigmatic Hungarian proverb, again, a blade of reed wants to hedge with an axe. So maybe there is a connection. So significant is the connection of the contradictory phenomena. And at last, there are sayings based in the concept of reed as a place of protection or hideout. Thick like a reed forest, refuge is grove, reeds brooks, or refuge is a grove, reed is a garden, or refuge is a grove, reed is a circle, and etc. The last multiplied example is actually a formula used in fairy tales, in Hungarian fairy tales, to introduce an information that someone has suddenly disappeared. The words of the formula are partly incomprehensible to the contemporary speakers of Hungarian. The word illa meant a refuge. The other words are present in the contemporary Hungarian too. Actually, the formula is an enumeration of places for hideout, and most probably originates in the times of Tatar or Turkish conquest of Hungary. The Turks made in the lowlands of Hungary a significant cultural work since they drained the moors there to prevent the Hungarian rebels from hiding in the reeds. And the last one, chipke, a chicken is peeping in between a reed. So is the chicken peeping because it is feeling safe? Actually not. Here is introduced the ornithologist view on reeds as a niche full of life, a space where everything is shared and cannot be hidden. So the meaning of the proverbs is that the secret is being revealed. And now to conclude this als op construct, which I call by an euphemism, an experiment. So there are several opposite meanings connected to reed in texts, harmless and harmful. For example, to defend oneself with a blade of reed and the reed of the fight. Then the other opposition, a place to hide and a place of revelation. And the third one, weakness and a strength in adaptation. So the conceptual feature of switching a quality to a surprising contrary has served for many formulaic oxymora. The reed of the fight, a blade of reed wants to hedge with an axe, the other occurrence of a reed weapon in sagas, and so on. This is, after all, one of the basic figures in Proverbs 2. The problem with Holt in Egil's saga has not been solved, actually has not been identified either. The story on Grimm may have served just as an explanatory legend of the toponym. However, the connection to treasure hiding could be borrowed from a basic reed motif resource, although a Holt is not a very important point in a landscape. The most unclear occurrence of reed is in the three stanzas of Attila's dream. What is in common in reed, hawks, and dogs? The hawks and dogs are symbols of a high social status, but reed. People like birds and mammals, but do they like reed? People may occasionally eat hawks and dogs, but can they eat reed? Unless Attila was considered a panda, of course. And is it the metaphor of children as a young reed, also in Hungarian and Japanese stock, which could help to explain it? So I'm not going to offer an explanation, and I just stop with a statement that Proverbs may provide us with suggestions, at least, related to the possible meaning of a figurative text. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Michal, for your very interesting presentation with a lot of Hungarian proverbs. I don't know whether you agree with me or not, that in Hungarian proverbs, the reed is mainly the symbol or a synonym of the weakness of something not really strong. While in one of the sagas you mentioned, the reed was mentioned as a weapon or the strong thing. What is your opinion about it?
So, which one?
I think at the beginning you mentioned a saga, something like Kirchner, something like this, where the reed was mentioned as a kind of weapon.
Yes. Yeah, there are in two sagas actually. The one was the first one was or the second one was Cormac's saga.
Cormac,
Yeah, and I showed the. Shall I show back the PowerPoint?
Yes, please.
But
it was somewhere in the beginning. Well, no, next one maybe. No.
This one.
This one, yeah.
Oh, so you still? I've tried to open back the Zoom. Yeah. Sorry. What was the question? The
question. So, is the understanding of the reed as a symbol different in Hungarian proverbs or in the saga, where we can read about the reed of the fight? My understanding is that it's something very strong, so a kind of weapon. While in Hungarian proverbs, it's mainly mentioned as something representing something very weak.
Yes, actually, so this opposite between the contradiction between weapon, something harmless, and something harmful is very strong only in sagas, not in this is missing in the Hungarian proverbs. But there is at least the contradiction or opposite between the strength or adaptability and the weakness of it. Yeah, but this is something the reed as metaphor for someone who is adaptable, for many, or who is adaptable, who has an adaptability, is can be found in any I think European and maybe Eurasian even proverbs. This is one of the most one of the proverbs which can be found almost all over the world, I guess. But not so. In Hungarian, amongst the Hungarian proverbs, I haven't found any proverb that blade of reed would be used as a weapon.
Maybe it also depends on the type of reed that we have in different countries, because there is also like a reed sugar in Hungary. The reed that we have, it's not a strong plant. Maybe in the old Scandinavian countries there was another type of reed which has a common name but another quality.
Yeah, but I'm not botanist, but I think this nadmis, which was this honey of reed honey, is just quite old description of the new phenomenon which was brought to Europe in 18th century, because I think this I don't know how is it, the sugar reed or whatever, or cane maybe. So the other species from the sugar from which the sugar is made has been introduced to Europe just in 18th century or maybe a bit earlier.
Mm-hmm.
So I think basically there is no the reed is present or has been present all over Europe, at least I don't know if the same species, but at least it has the same occurrence. And but from the historical reasons, I think, and I mentioned those Tatars and Turks, the reed has so many expressions in among the Hungarian proverbs just because of this historical cultural background. But it was not very significant elsewhere. So I don't know any Czech actually proverb with reed.
Thank you very much, Michal.